welcome back to my podcast. It's been a while. So, what's happened since episode 38 in, checks notes? 2018? Well, rather a lot. Much of which is personal, so I'm not going to be discussing it here. However, what I have done in terms of YouTube, gaming and tech and all that sort of stuff, it's actually quite a lot. Now, firstly, Board Game Geek keeps doing all sorts of weird changes to game pages, forums, geek lists and the store, and I'm finding these all negative moves, and so I'm finding my engagement with it has dropped well off. I used to log on pretty much every day and engage in loads of stuff. Now I tend to limit myself to my game pages for stuff that I've made available via Game Crafter, getting involved with the fan mod for Eclipse, known as the version 1.5 update, which allows you to use some of the second Dawn of the Galaxy balance tweaks in your original version 1 game. And of course the other reason I go to Board Game Geek is it is still the best and only real option to go to if you're into board gaming. Now, board gaming itself has been a bit of a challenge with COVID, and I've had 2 years really to have a good ponder about what I want to do. Now, obviously I've done some online board gaming, which was not great, and I've also played some Steam computer games, which are, board games, and that's been okay, but it has made me consider that I really need to scale back my collection because, to be honest, it's taken up far too much space, and in fact, most of it's now currently in storage because I filled up 2 rooms and was struggling to get into my bed, for example. So I'm also avoiding Kickstarter like the plague, although that's not always that successful. And yeah, I'm really scaling back on the FOMO factor. And I think going forward, I'm going to try and pick some classics that I just can't let go. But I'm going to try and really focus on, games I'm actually going to get to the table, so for example ones that would appeal to my family or are really popular, and this should free up not only some funds but also space, more importantly. And I think really key is the games that I do keep will actually get to the table and don't just gather dust looking pretty on a shelf. Now, in regard to war games, I found my interest rapidly reducing there as well. Now, I have got excited about a few things and I do dabble, but really, I think realistically I'm going to plan to sell off, or have in fact sold off, a lot of my miniatures and games. But I will keep them kicking about because they're really useful for pinching ideas from for a start, but also because they are great. Now, for wargaming actually, I found Command & Colours Ancients really fits the bill and takes up way less space than box after box of miniatures that you have to assemble and paint and are heavy. In a similar way, for fantasy, I've actually picked up Battlegrounds, as recommended by Tom Vassell, which is a card-based fantasy mass battle game. But I haven't totally abandoned it, so my main interests are probably Conquest, which is a large format miniature mass battle game, and ironically on the far opposite scale, I recently picked up Strength and Honour, which is a very interesting looking 2mm Ancients game. But I've also got into looking at the sort of original games like Kriegspiel, which is the classic game that sort of indirectly created D&D in fact. And I've also been dabbling with 3D printing, so Gaslands, World War II and Battletech are all potential options there, although the new Battletech miniatures are very tempting and I'm trying to avoid because, as I say, I'm trying to scale back, not increase my collection. And of course, COVID means I've effectively played no war games since 2018, so it's a bit hard to justify wasting things. Now, things might change in the future because obviously things are opening up again, but I'm going to try and limit my wargaming hobby, and this will preserve my bank balance, my shelf space, and even my eyes, which are starting to struggle with painting, particularly tiny miniatures, although ironically 2mm is pretty easy. You tend to just put a colour on and a wash and you're done. So, what has my main focus been and is likely to be going forward? Well, computing and role-playing games, to be honest. So on the computer gaming front, we'll start with consoles. Now, I really enjoyed my playthrough of Detroit Become Human, and I did upload that as a video series, and that was on the PS4, although it is now available on the PC. But I am starting to find myself getting back into Xbox gaming again. I was a big Xbox fan, and I sold off most of my Xbox stuff, but I have picked up a few games because of the compatibility option. You can play them on the modern Xbox systems, and the disastrous launch of the Xbox One really scuppered it, and Microsoft have done a great job at turning it around, and the Xbox Series X is really tempting, but due to, again, COVID, it seems to be really hard to find in stock. It's fairly pricey as well, but that might be changing now things are returning to normal, and that's a similar issue for PC gaming. Now I have plugged away with my old GPU, but it's really starting to show its age, and I think actually Nvidia might be about to drop support for new drivers for it, and even at 1080p some of the more recent games can be a bit of a challenge for it. So I've got my eye on upgrading it, but I think that's going to be a next year activity because, again, stock price, that's all a big factor. So I'm keen to see what the Steam Deck can do, because I think the Steam Deck will be able to play a lot of the games I've got as well as my current computer, possibly even better, because it might even be able to do a bit of ray tracing, for example. But in the long term, I'm probably going to look at AMD very closely, particularly because I'm likely to favour a flavour of Linux for my new setup, and AMD seem to have much better drivers on Linux than they do on Windows. I've always been more of a fan of Nvidia drivers on Windows. So, whilst returning for all this normality to come, how have I managed to get my computer gaming fix? Well, I've dipped into retro gaming, so I managed to pick up fairly cheap a Wii U and a 3DS, so that was great to explore the Nintendo game catalogue, particularly as you can do things with the Wii U and 3DS which allow you to play all sorts of stuff. But for other stuff, like Sega, Neo Geo, whilst you can play that on Nintendo, actually, I found the best way to get involved in that side is to retire or sell off my originals and actually do it all on the Mister, which is a great FPGA solution. And I think it's the best way to get involved these days. As long as you're looking for stuff that's PS1 or earlier. Now, the PS1 release is fairly recent, and it might not be quite perfect, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what it can do on the PS1 front. But anything before the PS1, it's probably okay to run. I'm looking forward to seeing some strong development for the Saturn and the 3DO. That would be great to see. But for everything else, it's great. And with I've actually got an MVS motherboard and supergun, but they seem to be on the blink, so it's been a godsend to be able to just fire up my FPGA Mister, and I can't recommend it enough. It feels great. Now, I was lucky that I got it before the prices and stock levels went doolally, and I also managed to get in on the pre-order for the multi-system, which recently arrived, and it's a really smart and feature-rich upgrade, and although I grumbled a bit in my video assembling it, it's pretty good. Unfortunately, it's a little bit pricey, and of course it's now out of stock, so hopefully you'll be able to get in on batch 3 when they manage to get that all sorted, but really, really recommend it. Now, turning to my other form, and probably main form of gaming, is role-playing games, RPGs. Now, I did manage to attend a few virtual sessions and conventions, and I really want to highlight in particular GrogMeet, because by attending that I managed to engage with game designers, players, GMs, and I've had all sorts of fun playing online. And whilst some have been fancy virtual tabletops with like miniatures and fake tables and stuff, I've also done a lot of theatre of the mind with just like Discord or Discord and some other tools. And I've actually now find myself playing in potentially up to 3 sessions a month, which, compared to virtually 0 a month, is pretty good improvement. And my top picks recently for games I've played has been the D-Sanction, which has been really good, Liminal, lovely production, Mothership, brilliant, and of course the various systems published by Free League, mostly based around the Mutant Year Zero game engine, so Alien, Corollis, all that stuff. And I believe next week I might be playing in a game of Blade Runner using the beta test rules that are available for backers of the Kickstarter. So really exciting, and all this was made possible by Dirk the Dice and his Aftermath game at Virtual GrogMeet. So thanks, Dirk, for that, giving me a bit of a kick and getting me re-engaged with role-playing games in a big way. So I've been revitalised by all this online play, and I even, in the recent Virtual GrogMeet, decided to run a session. So I took the D-Sanction and hacked it together with Games Workshop's 40k, and it seemed to be well received. I had a fairly fancy virtual tabletop, and the adventure I think could be developed a bit more to be a proper adventure. It was just designed to be sort of one and done in a convention format, and I think I might be getting a bit of a reputation for hacking games and settings, because I've got several projects on the go. For example, Blake 7, Judge Dredd, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, and I got a few others. But the problem with all these, they can't be published. But so in parallel, I have been involved in doing some stuff that could actually be released. So I've done some collaborative adventures, mostly for D&D, but they also work for other systems. And the first one I got involved with was actually triggered by a Twitter post asking for contributions, and I'm glad to say it's now released and is available as a free adventure on DriveThruRPG. I'll try and put a link so you can find that. And I'm also glad to say that I've got involved in another collaborative adventure that's in deep development and it's looking like might be quite special. And hopefully that might be coming out in 2023. I think the idea was to release it in 2022, but I'm going to say 2023 to be on the safe side. And I contributed effectively 2 encounters, but there's other stuff that I might be asked to get involved in, we'll see. And I'm keen to see the final result of the group effort, because I haven't actually seen the whole thing. And based on the previous adventure, I think this one's looking much better. So on top of that, I'm also trying to develop my own RPG rules. Now, obviously, as I said, some of them are hacks, so that they won't be able to be released, but I'm actually looking at getting some that could actually be published. So my plan is to release some beta test rules to Patreon supporters, probably do that later this year. Longer term, probably get them as PDFs on DriveThruRPG, with the aim of offering them as print-on-demand titles, although from what I understand they need to sell enough copies first before that option gets unlocked, which is a bit frustrating. And of course, as all part of this, I've actually found myself with a Discord server, which at the moment is just a small but slowly growing group of UK gaming folks who I've interacted with via various means, Twitter and online play, etc. And I hope this is going to be a really good way going forward to get online play arranged and a wider pool of beta testers. I'm also looking at how to get Patreon and Discord hooked up together. So, as you can see, there's actually been a lot going on in the background, but my focus has been obviously study, getting a job, and then after that playing, writing and doing videos, and it's probably all in that order actually. So that means the podcast has been left to limp along a bit, but I have done some recordings which are over on Patreon and probably will stay as Patreon only options. So I haven't totally neglected those of you who like to listen rather than watch, although I do need a few more of you to chuck me some shekels over on Patreon. Now, on YouTube, I will keep posting videos on RPGs, board games, war games, technology, EVs and history. I've got various channels for all that. And I think 2022 can see me being still fairly busy with work and study, so it's going to be a while before this semi-undone dead beast of a podcast can really rise to glory once more. So I'd like to thank those of you who've actually managed to stuck around and given me feedback, and it's normally most welcome. I've had very few bits of feedback which have not been helpful. So thanks for that. It's really, really appreciated. Anyway, I think that's been a fair bit of waffling. So until the next one, happy gaming.